Well, welcome back to Chadwick TMD. Hopefully you've seen a couple of my previous videos, but in this one what I'd like to take a look at is how to get better performance out of the Hornby Class 08 Shunter. This one came with sound, but as I'm sure you know, these short wheelbase locos with only 6 wheels, the pickups can get a little worn, a little dirty, so can the track, bad track laying, a little bit of design problems perhaps from Hornby, but it doesn't run as sweet as a nut. So what my idea is we'll actually take it apart, put a different chip in it, and then fit a Stay Alive, and then and see how it runs. So that's what we'll do. Anyway, we'll start it up so you can hear the sound before we start. And then we'll just run it across some points, and hopefully you can see the problems that I've had with it. And as you can hear, that the sound actually cuts out a few times. On bad ones, it'll actually restart the whole startup sequence. So there we go. So that's how it sounds. That's what it sounds like, and obviously you can hear it cutting out as it runs across certain points. So let's take it apart and see how we get on. What I'm working on today here is just a large foam base. It just stops stuff from running away. So there's the box of the little beast, the Hornby Class 8, and here's the little beauty itself. It's quite a little gem really as far as locos go. I do think the detailing on it is very, very good. It's a nice loco. As I said, the only shame about this, not only this loco, but all small wheelbase locos, is obviously the number of pickups, and therefore if it hits dirt on the track or dirt on the wheels or poor pickups or whatever, then the thing stutters and goes. And because it's got DCC sound, it's obviously far more noticeable. So what we'll do now is we'll turn it over, and most of these come with these 2 small tanks. And they're just a simple push fit, so they'll just come off hopefully quite easily. Let's have a little look. Yep, there's one. Whoops. And there's the other, so that's those 2. And underneath those tanks, hopefully you can see that there are 2 crosshead screws in there. And to remove the body, it's those 2 screws. And on this end, you'll see 4 crosshead screws, and it's the outer 2. So it's the outer 2 on this end, and those 2 on this end. Okay, that's the last of the 4 screws. and the body should simply rise up. Be very careful here. There's a little pipe. You just need to make sure that's free as you lift it up to make sure it doesn't snag. And then, as you can see, there's that little pipe. So just need to lever it over the side, and hopefully the body comes off. There we go. And now you can see, if I turn it around, and then bring this camera in a little closer. There we are. So this is obviously the body. In here is the speaker, which goes straight through was placed against the grill. Here's the loco body, and there's the 21 pin chip, all good to go. There isn't a great deal of room inside here, so what I'll do now is I'll remove some of the bits and then show you where I'm going to put the Stay Alive, and hopefully replace this small speaker on the front here with 2 sugar cubes. Here's an 08 now with the 21 pin chip has been removed, and there you can see the contacts. These are the 2 speaker cables, and normally you'd find the speaker cables would come off of the 21 pin chip. Here is the replacement chip which I'm going to put in. This is the Locksound version 4 chip, and the reason I want to use this one is because I can easily buy the Stay Alive that goes with it. So what I'm going to do is remove these speaker cables here and use the two speaker wires that are supplied that come direct off the loco. They come straight out of here, speaker 1 and speaker 2. So I'm going to remove these. Remove this speaker. This little bass speaker is far too big, and install a pair of sugar cube speakers, which I'll show you in a bit. Now, I spoke about the Stay Alive, and here is the Stay Alive that I've bought. It's made by ESU and comes with 3 cables, as you can see there, hopefully. And this is the hard bit, and really this isn't for the faint-hearted now. Hopefully you can see, if I zoom in now, hopefully you can see that there are some solder terminals down this side here. Well, this Stay Alive, the 3 cables need to go on these upper 3 contacts, and I'll show you in a bit the instructions that come with it. So this is where you really need to consider your soldering skills, because these are relatively small. And if I can show you something with scale, so if there's the loco next to it, you can see that these clearly they're not very big. They're only about, I suppose, 3 millimeter across, something like that. But clearly, if you make a bit of a mess of it, you could ruin the whole chip, and these chips are, basically 100 quid. This one came from Lego Man Biffo, is it called? Just a second. Lego Man Biffo, which I bought at one of the model railway shows, and he reprogrammed it with a better sound recording from an 08. And hopefully at the end of this video, I'll be able to show you this 08 with this sound in, and the original shunter, which I showed you stripping down earlier, which actually belongs to a friend of mine, so we can compare the sounds and compare how useful the Stay Alive is. Having had a chance to have another look at these components and how tight it is for space inside the body shell, I think what I might try to do is cut into the body shell itself and put this Stay Alive inside the cab itself. So what I think I'll try to do is cut out a section here and Dremel it out, cut it out, and then hopefully this component will then fit snugly at sort of ground level inside inside the cabin. So there seems to be enough room in there. So what I'll do is mark out this section kind of like that, if you can see that, and also down there. Let me see if I can just zoom in, if we can see this bit. So this is the area here that I'm going to try and completely cut away, which will allow me to pass the Stay Alive then into the crew compartment and have the leads come through, then solder the leads onto the chip, which will then go onto the top of the 21 pin plug. So I think that's what we'll have a go at, but otherwise I can't really see where else I can put this Stay Alive. The dimensions are very, very snug around here. I need the front space for at least one and hopefully two sugar cube speakers, so there really is no more room bar in the crew compartment in here. I've had a look on YouTube. I can find no advice at all on how to remove this section of cab. There are two little lugs coming through there, but I can't see if it's glued in or whatever. So I think I'll take a Dremel and cut out this space and see how we get on. Wish me luck. Okay, I've Dremeled out this section here, this small section here, and then what becomes apparent is the way it's held together is this whole cab section will actually move up. The bulkhead inside has become loose. I just want to give it a prod to see if I could shift it, because obviously I need to get the Stay Alive in there. And then what becomes apparent is that if you just flex this floor a little bit, the cab becomes free and slides up. So if this will just pull off, if you can see it kind of eases out there. And if I do the same here, and then the cab simply lifts off. Beautiful. There's the bulkhead wall with all the details of obviously where the driver sits and all that kind of stuff, the two seats and the brake. So now I've got all the room in the world to put my Stay Alive in. One other thing I failed to mention about these ones was these doors are actually spring loaded. I don't know if you've noticed that. See if I can do that without scratching it too much. But they're spring loaded doors, so I can either pop my driver's head out of this window or indeed open the door and have him half leaning out. So what I think I'll do next is I shall cut away all this black section. Let me just move those bits. I shall cut away all this black section here, and then it'll open it up for the Stay Alive then to come through from the cab area into the main loco. So let's just have a quick whiz at that. I'll do this one in real time. Okay, so now you should be able to see. Let me zoom back out a little bit. So now hopefully you can see that there's a gap through there, and then when I put that up against where it goes in the shunter cab there, we can see we've got a fair amount of space there for the Stay Alive to pop through. Let's see how that's going to kind of sit in there. I have to make it, still make some, oh no, it's still not going to go, so I'm going to still have to make a little bit more room in there, so I'll have another little hack about. I'm sure there'll be a few people watching thinking, you know, what on earth am I doing to a decent locomotive to, you know, just to add a Stay Alive. But if the thing doesn't work perfectly with the sound switched on, then there's literally no point in having it. And of course, being a shunter, it spends most of its life running over points. On this layout here on Chadwick TMD, all the points, I think except for one of the Y points, are electro frog, no insular flogs whatsoever. So I've kind of done the best I can, but you know, if it won't run properly with sound, then you know it's especially if you take it to an exhibition and people, you know, obviously love to hear the various sounds that locomotives make, and if they don't really, if they stall every time they hit a point, then what's the point of it in the first place? So that's the underside of the control panel completely cut away. And now hopefully, where's the rest of it? That should give us enough space for the Stay Alive to fit in there and remain out of sight through the windows, and the cables to pass through back into the cab. So let's reassemble this, get a bit of glue, and join you in a minute or two. And then thread those cables through. We're getting there. So pop if you can see that, then this slides back on. Kind of clicks into place at the bottom. And there we go. So the visibility from the outside through the cab is very minimal. You can't really see it. And I suppose the proof of the pudding is, can I still open this door? And yes, I can. And then if you look through the door, I don't know if I can show you this. If you look through the door, there's the Stay Alive inside. Great, we're good to go. Well, we're ready to do the soldering, and looking through the instructions to the Stay Alive. Sadly, they're not in English, they're all in German, and when you go online, there's no translation. But as you can see, if I can poke my finger in the way there, that's the one here. It's revision 41 2012, and it's obviously, the cables are obviously red, white, and then black. And if I take this away, and you can see the layout of the chip underneath, it kind of matches the map there with all the components, so you can see, well, hopefully you can see the way it kind of pans out. Right, so I suppose I better get on and solder it up. I've had to remove the foam pad I was working on because it was making the table shake too much, and I've soldered the first two cables on, and my soldering skills aren't that bad, but this is quite a difficult manoeuvre. So here goes the third and final one, the red. Nope. And I think that's it. Now what I thought I'd do now is just insert this into the locomotive. And if you can, see if I can move this around so you can see it. There's the Stay Alive inside there, coming onto the chip, and the chip's attached to the speaker. So what I'm going to do is pop that onto the track with the loco and actually just check out to see if the Stay Alive works. Okay. Now moving back to the loco itself, as this was a Hornby sound fitted from new, what they've done is they've wired up the speaker cables, these two cables here, just pull that back out of there, directly to the speakers on the inside of the body, and instead of coming off the chip as it normally would, they actually come off of this part just here. So what I'm going to do is remove those two by snipping them. Then they're marked SP1 and SP2, which is obviously speaker 1 and speaker 2. I'll just double check that I've got the right ones, which here is this one here. And then the replacement chip will have the speaker installed straight off the chip rather than use this method here. Of course, what we don't need is these two wires flapping around needlessly, as it were. So let's see, I'll just take these two out, just check that again. Speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 1 and speaker 2. So hopefully you can see that in there. Right, I suppose the next thing to do is to refit the chip. Let me just go wide. Is now to refit this chip, and I'm going to use the original speaker that came with it just for now, and then check it all works, and obviously check that the Stay Alive works. So we'll pop him back on that. That's that. So there's the Stay Alive. Pop him in there, and then obviously there's the speaker, which I'll just hold to one side as we set it up and test it. Okay. Well, this is the moment to find out if it's all been worthwhile. So what I've done is just, as you can see, I've laid the Stay Alive just on the back end here. Pop the speaker on the grass, and then the train's on the tracks. So if I just move him slightly, move one way, turn him the other way. Yep, so we have movement. Turn the sound on. And this is the sound from Lego Man Biffo, which is a much better sound than the original one that came with the 08. Of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, so if the Stay Alive works, if we take it off the track, it should continue to sound. And that was probably about 3 seconds. So it all works. So what I'm going to do next is modify the body shell to accept the two, well, hopefully the two sugar speakers to go in there. Obviously remove this speaker and then put it all back together. So the next thing to do is to modify this body shell to allow the sound to come out of the front end here through this radiator grille. Now I've done some of this work already, and I'm not too sure if you can see inside here whether the camera will pick this up, but there are 4 pegs that came through, 4 yellow pegs from the radiator grille, and what I did simply with a Dremel was to drill out those those yellow pegs coming through to try to break the bond with the glue, and then simply to prise off this front radiator grille, and it simply comes away. That reveals a hard part of the body shell here in that centre section. So what I did then, again with the Dremel, was just to drill a series of holes around the outside, connect them all up, and that falls out. So now with the sugar cube speakers directly behind this hole, then obviously the sound will come straight out, straight through this radiator grille. Hopefully you can see here that the slats in the radiator grille, it isn't a solid radiator grille as it is on the back one, but the Hornby one, you can see there it's actually a slatted, it's a much better moulded grille. What you can also see, hopefully, is inside here there's a crosshead screw at the bottom. For what purpose I really don't know, and there's a few other moulded bits in here, and I imagine that those will probably have to go to allow the sugar cubes room to fit. So moving on to the sugar cube speaker, these are the ones I'll be using from ESU. It's the Locksound 50321 speaker, and there's its bits, and what you get in the bag, these pieces here, you get the speaker, which apparently is kind of similar to a speaker found in a mobile phone, and hopefully you can see that there are two small contacts here and here. What I think I'll have to do is bend these out a little bit and then solder the cables up, and then run from here to the other speaker, and then obviously onto these wires that came on the chip itself. So what I'll do is cut these wires and then feed these two cables here onto the Locksound speaker. What also comes in the speaker bag is a base plate, which looks like it holds two speakers by the way it kind of shapes up, which I don't need. I need a single speaker base plate, and there's a double kind of spacer and a single spacer, if you can see these, and then the speaker then goes on the top, kind of like that, and I don't think there's that much room in the front end, so what I'm going to do is dispense with the single width spacer, so I'll just be using that area there. So what I'm going to do is I'll glue this together and the other one, and then tape them into the bodywork to make sure that the shell will actually go over the top and that I've got enough clearance before I glue them in place. Well, I've assembled both of the sugar cube speakers. Here's one and the other one's in this little vise. I just glued them up with some polystyrene cement. They seem to hold quite well. Now of course it's the difficulty of soldering the cables on. I believe these are both 8 ohm speakers, and so we need to wire them in parallel, so together they become 4 ohm. If they were in series, then they would become 16 ohms, which is outside that the specifications of the chip. So let's wire this one up and we'll see how we get on. And there's the first one. They take to it quite well. This really isn't too difficult, I don't think. So the way I do this, I'll show you on this black cable. All I do is with a scalpel, I just remove a small amount of the insulation and leave, I suppose, what's that, 3 or 4 millimeters of cable showing. I kind of give it a little dip in a tiny amount of flux. I then a little bit of solder. I think I'm just going to trim that down just a little bit with a scalpel, make it a little bit shorter. I think that should do it. I've tinned it with a little solder, and we kind of should be good to go. So offer him up onto there. Nope. And the difficulty always is holding it still whilst the solder solidifies. I think we're good to go. Yep, I don't know if you can see that very well. Then all I'm going to do with the next one, so they wire together in parallel rather than in series, so that's the way. And then those two cables there obviously naturally go back to the chip. Well, here it is on the layout, and as you can see, here are the two sugar cube speakers, and then if I start it up, and I think you can agree that the sound coming out of these two sugar cubes is clearly a lot better quality than the sound that was coming out of the others. I just lifted off the track just to make sure that that Stay Alive is still functioning, which I'm sure it is. And yeah, it's fine. Pop it back on. So we're getting there. Well, it looks like we're pretty much there now. All I have to do now is to glue these two speakers in this area in front of the the lower one in front of the spindle, one above, and then route the Stay Alive obviously into the back end. And to do that, what I'm going to do is lift the chip off again and run these cables underneath the chip and put a bit of tape to tape them down, and then glue the two speakers in situ, and then obviously refit the cab components. Well, that was pretty straightforward. As you can see, I've routed the cable for the Stay Alive underneath the chip, and the two speaker cables come along the front onto those speakers, which are now with cyno glue on the front of the shunter. I've tried to fit the shell many times, and what's been happening is you have to remove quite a lot of plastic from inside of this shell. I hope I can kind of show you this. Most of the front, the chimney, and I mentioned before there was like a boss sticking down with a screw in it, all that's been removed, and I've even removed some pieces of plastic on the sides here because the chip itself seems to touch the edge of the shell. So where these transistors here go up, I've removed some of the plastic, and like I say, some of the other stuff around there to give the speaker an adequate space. So all we need to do now is pop the shell on after threading the Stay Alive through. Kind of like this, and then you need to ease the shell on. I'd like to say this was simple and straightforward, but it's nothing like that at all. All these little cables for the speakers and the Stay Alive and everything else, everything seems to jump up and get in the way, and then you find you get yourself all the way through to the middle, and then you rip off a piece of solder from the speakers. I think we're kind of there this time. Let's have a little look. It is a tight fit. Okay, we're there. Right, so just as it is, I'll just pop this on the layout just to check it runs. I'll just give the Stay Alive a chance to charge up before I whip it back onto the desk. So there it is, that'll last a couple of seconds, then it goes off as we'd expect. So that's it, all good to go. I'll pop the screws back in, then refit the radiator cover onto there. I've got the cab to go back on and a driver to put in the cab, and then we'll pop it back on the layout and see how it runs at the very end. Well, here we are back at Chadwick TMD, and at the end of this evolution. And the task was much harder than I thought it originally would be, obviously just because of the lack of room inside the shell. But what have I done in these three? What we've sort of obtained in these with these things is kind of three things really. The use of the Stay Alive has ensured that the shunter will go across all the points, the odd bit of dirty track, without dropping out the sound. The sound is much better now that I've installed the sound or Lego Man Biffo installed a new sound file, and then finally with the use of the two sugar cube speakers rather than the little tinny speaker that it came with, you end up with a much better loco. All I have to do is to carry out a bit of weathering. I've popped a driver in, and now I'll run it and show you the improvements. So this will hopefully show you the slow running characteristics as it comes across this double slip. Before I would never even venture of bringing this shunter onto the double slip. The sound is actually much louder with the two sugar cubes, which is great then, because at an exhibition I can turn it up, and of course at home when I'm just running I can have it turned down. I'll now switch to the original video at the beginning where I showed my friend Shunter with the original sound chip, so you can see how that runs. And then hopefully you'll agree this is a far better sound, but it really is the running characteristics that make it a far more superior model. Well, there we go. One recommendation I would do is if you want to improve yours is not to use this Lock Sound 4 chip, but use a miniature chip instead. The amount of work it took to get it installed by taking the amount of the body shell on the inside was horrendous. It really was. I thought I was going to ruin the shell at one stage, but everything else is absolutely brilliant. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks very much. Bye bye.